got to bet on yourself. Everyone wants this absolute answer of how they're going to make money and how they're going to be protected. I can guarantee you that first day when you're out of your W-2 job, you don't take a week off. You get right into work and you start figuring out where's money going to come from. Like, you got to bet on yourself and take the leap and just go for it.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we're so pleased to have Tim Vitale with us. Tim, welcome.
Thanks. Hey, I appreciate you guys having me today.
Absolutely, Tim. Well, thank you again for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. To start with, you can tell our listeners a little bit about your background, how long you were in your initial line of work.
Sure. I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I went to school at UNC Wilmington for a accounting and finance degree. I moved up to Manhattan for a girl, got a job on Wall Street doing insurance accounting. I worked there for about 8.5 years, started at entry level and worked up to assistant vice president. And so I was 28 years old when I got promoted to AVP. And probably one of the youngest people in my organization never do that, because I was just super aggressive and, very clear on my goals and things like that. And then that's actually what kind of spurred me to get into commercial real estate investing. And fast forward to now, I quit my job in September of 2021 and I've been doing commercial real estate full time ever since.
That's right. And you see commercial real estate, is it multifamily you're focused on?
Yeah, I do. Majority is multifamily. I do have a couple triple net, like restaurants and flex warehouse locations as well. Mm-hmm. But I only have like 3 of those versus like 15 apartment complexes.
Nice. Right. Okay. And did you say regionally it was like the Southeast is your main focus?
Yeah. I live in the Carolinas and, everybody loves investing in Texas, Florida, and the Carolinas. So our primary market is North and South Carolina, but we also have a property in Georgia. We have a property in Alabama, and we're working on closing a 356 unit in Mississippi.
Wow. Great. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That's the biggest deal that we've done so far. So super excited about that one closing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Tim, what was a deciding factor that you seem like had a good career path in the accounting field? Like you said, you moved up quickly through the ranks. And what was a deciding factor to make you want to switch over to more an entrepreneur? Was it always an entrepreneur bent or freedom of time? What was your driving factor?
What they say is like you drink the Kool-Aid, right? Well, I drank the Kool-Aid thinking that if I get to a VP level as fast as possible, that's when you're going to make those life-changing money raises, 50%, 100%, like, working on Wall Street in Manhattan, like I'm going to make buku money. Like everyone's got this glorified image of what working on Wall Street is because of the movie Wolf of Wall Street, and hedge fund and, all the people that work on Wall Street, right? But not everybody makes, that kind of money. So it's interesting. But I got a 3% raise when I got promoted to assistant VP. And I had a conversation with my boss. I was like, wait a second, when does that happen? She goes, that never really happens. I was like, what are we doing this for then? She goes, well, you're an officer of the company now, so your life insurance policy tripled. I was like, wonderful. That only helps my wife if I die. Right. So I was like, that doesn't really help me at all. So that was kind of the catalyst into, I got to figure out something else, because I had routinely always been told, even in like my younger years and in my professional career, that I was the best employee anybody ever had. It's because I was like aggressive and I did what I said I was going to do and, personable and, I was able to do all the corporate schmoozing and everything that was necessary in order to work up the corporate ladder. But the result wasn't what I was after. And it wasn't there. Like the money wasn't there. I mean, truth be told here, I was only making $100,000. I went from $99,000 a year to $103,000 living in Manhattan. Like this, it doesn't work. Right. It was like, wait a second. I look at my boss. I was like, I don't want to be where you are in 20 years. You're stressed out. You're working literally around the clock, weekends. And I was like, for what? Nobody, it's like, so that was kind of like the catalyst of like, all right, something's got to change. My father-in-law, he was starting to listen to some podcasts about real estate. I won't mention the guy's name because he's been since moved to like Portugal and some bad things have happened. But he ran a really great podcast. So he started listening to that podcast. He told us to listen to it. We listened to a couple and we're like, yeah, that sounds good. And then listen to old Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then that was kind of all right, well, I got to figure this out. Like, I want to do this. I see all these people making money doing real estate and they're not as sophisticated and far as educated, and they don't have as much professional experience as I can. If they can do it, I definitely can do it. And then that was kind of that was the beginning of 2019. And then from there, that was kind of like the starting point for me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah.
There's back when print was in print, the New Yorker magazine had I think it was around, I guess it was, when was Sarbanes-Oxley? Was that around 2009?
Oh, SOX is early 2000s. Yeah.
Okay. Early 2000s. Okay. So
yeah, that was the whole like WorldCom Enron thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. It wasn't related to the housing crisis. It was related to the corporate malfeasance and whatnot. So anyway, this cartoon in New Yorker magazine, if anybody ever picked that up, you remember the cartoons, they were usually pretty cool. And there were two women sitting in a bar in this cartoon. And it was, oh, look at that guy. Oh, he's so cool. He's like a secret agent man, kind of a, sort of vibe. And it was, what does he do? Oh, he's an accountant.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Sorry. I don't fit the mold for an accountant. I'm very energetic, outgoing. Like I love talking with people. I'm just really good at Excel sheets and numbers and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of like what ultimately parlayed very, very well into the commercial real estate side of things, because I understand the math, I understand the underwriting, I understand financial principles and how they apply and like tax savings. And I know more than most people when it comes to all of those things. So when I'm building relationships with my investors, they're talking to me about these things all the time. And I obviously have preface like, hey, I'm not your CPA, but this is how I know it works. And you need to figure out a better way to do this, because otherwise this is going to happen. But I don't provide the roadmap, but I just know I can see forward and say, hey, that's not going to work. So what that ultimately does is it builds this different level of trust with my investors, because they're like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Not only can he invest my money and make me money, he's got a solid business plan. He's confident about his numbers. He's not stuttering over it. He's got answers to all of my questions. He's partnered with great people. He lives in the market. Like there's so many positives there. And he's helping me with my tax savings and my depreciation and like, structuring my entities and stuff like that. And all of that is really, really valuable stuff. Again, I just preface that and say, hey, like, I'm not an attorney or CPA, but I do this for a living and I deal with this stuff every single day. And this is what I know you should do. You need to go talk to your person and get those things implemented. And that, man, it just really builds another level of trust and relationship with investors in order to continue investing with you.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. So Tim, did you go right away into apartments, or did you do any kind of real estate first? Straight into
so it took me about 11 months to buy my first house, because I was living in Charlotte at the time. And I ended up buying a condo, paid cash for it, creative financing from day one. I took like a personal loan, a 401k loan, and a loan from my dad in order to buy this place, $76,000 condo. The GIS said it was a 2-1. After walk-ins, it was at really a 3-1.5. And, I had been listening to every single Bigger podcast episode. And I said, I'm going to be the best Burr investor ever. Right. And I ended up paying for that. And then I started the refinance process 6 months later, and the appraisal comes back, and the appraisal says on the the comp-based approach, it said $76,000. I was like, wait a second, this isn't right. Like it's got more bedrooms. It's got another half bath. I've renovated the place, yet you appraised it for what I paid for. And they're like, yeah, well, there's not enough comps in order to support it. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then on the other side of the page, there was this box called the income-based approach, and that appraised for $100,000. And I was like, this is what it should have appraised for, $1 a square foot, because it was like 1,000 square foot condo. And they're like, no, only 5 units and up can use that box. And I was like, wait a second, this income-based approach, that makes sense to me coming from, finance background and things like that. So then, you can't see, it's kind of cut off, but one of the books up there on my shelf is called Multifamily Millions by David Lindell. And I read that book in early 2020. And that was my catalyst to go from single family right into commercial real estate. So I had, long story short, bought, one condo in 2019. And then I bought my first apartment complex in August of 2021, which was a 92, now 93 unit apartment complex in Georgia. And then, kind of went off to the races from there.
Okay. As you were doing that, as you were kind of making that shift into the multifamily, because you saw the numbers were better in terms of the economics, what were some other obstacles you had to overcome?
Well, my mom was a hairdresser. She's an LPN now, and my dad's a UPS driver. right? So I don't really come from money. And there was a lot of limiting beliefs that I had to overcome because at the time, I didn't know anybody that had $1 million net worth. I was like, how am I going to buy an apartment complex? You need a 1-to-1 net worth and 10% liquidity. I don't know anybody with $1 million net worth. And then I didn't know anybody with $50,000 or $100,000 in their account looking to invest into a deal. And I didn't know like who had the deal. There were so many things that I didn't know that I didn't have access to. And that's ultimately what takes the longest part of trying to get into the commercial real estate space is building relationships with those people that can do those things for you. But that's what I loved about commercial real estate was I didn't have to have anything. I mean, technically, some of the deals that we do, like I didn't find the deal. I didn't write the earnest money check. I didn't raise the money and I didn't sign on the debt. Yet I get a piece of equity in the deal, right? It's like, wait a second, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then, as you kind of grow and mature in space and become more valuable yourself and can bring more value to the table, now we do less and less and less with partners. And now I just have my main business partner. His name's Tim Vest, and we raise the money or we write the check ourselves. We have our own property management company now. We're fully vertically integrated in construction and all that kind of stuff. And, it kind of grows and develops over time. But the single-handedly most difficult thing to start was to get into the game. And all of that is built on relationships that took me about 2 years to build.
Right. It's absolutely. I mean, that's what we found too. I mean, there's a lot of, in the beginning, you're touring properties, building a relationship with brokers, giving them real feedback on it. They can see you're serious. And then, eventually you start getting, the off market deals, the calls on something that's on a short list. But yeah, it's the long game for sure.
Yeah. And most people get frustrated and then they quit before they find success because we're so adapted to this American culture of instant gratification. And, I just love the principles of provide value with no expectation of return. I mean, if you've read the book, Go Giver, I mean, that's kind of like a blueprint to living a good life. And I promise you that if you give to others with no expectation of return because you genuinely want to, like, because people can feel it if you're doing it with like an underlying, well, you're going to owe me something, or if you're just doing it because you want to, like that builds relationships better than anything. Then you just have to get over the fact that you're probably going to work for free for the first however long period of time. Do whatever you can to get into your first deal, to get that experience, work for free, whatever, get in the room. Ultimately, at the end of the day is what's going to drive your success.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Tim, what was as you look back, what was one of the first victories you can point to that either initially their first property or even just when you made the transition to full time into real estate investing that kind of solidified the fact that this was truly a path forward for you?
It wasn't either one of those, which is, this why I think this is a great podcast, right? Because it wasn't the success that I had closed like maybe 2 or 3 deals. And the COVID conversation came up and my boss was like, all right, everyone's go back to the office. And I was like, I'm going to get fired for doing real estate stuff at the office because I was working from home for 2 years, and that enabled me to kind of do my job, right, as necessary, but also use my laptop and like be part of Zoom calls and networking and blah, 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 all the things, right? And what the single-handed event that made me have that level of success is when my boss told me we had to come back to the office. I go downstairs and I talk to my wife, and my wife goes, I don't want you to go back to the office either. And she was like, let's sell the house. I was like, what? And she goes, let's sell the house. And she's like, how much equity do we have in it? I was like, $150,000, $160,000 in equity. And I was like, well, that's enough to live off of for 2 years. So, if I can't put any money into the bank account in 2 years by working for myself, it was never meant to be. So really it was my wife that kind of catalyzed this whole thing because we sold. So the timeline there was closed on my first deal, August 2021, closed the second deal, August 2021, gave my notice at the beginning of September 2021, left my job at the end of September, moved from Charlotte back to Wilmington on Halloween, essentially 2021. And then we closed on the sale of our house in November of 2021. So we are, alas, at the 2-year period. And thankfully, I can tell you that I'm never going back to a W-2 job. But just to kind of put it into perspective, how quickly things can grow if you build the relationships and the network and build the foundation that you need first, which was that 2 to 3 year period before I quit my job. I closed a couple of deals. I saw kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit of runway, I took a bet on myself, and my wife took a bet on me. And, we just went off to the races. And as soon as I was able to get out of my W-2 job and spend, I'm going to say 8 to 5, but realistically, like all day, every day working on your business, you're working during the best hours of your day that are going to be the most useful in order to look at deals and talk with brokers and talk with banks and insurance people, because like they work 9 to 5 jobs. So if you're busy at your 9 to 5 job, you're not going to have access to them before hours and after hours. Like you need to make yourself available. So freeing up that time was, absolutely the catalyst to the success. And a lot of people, I should say, they all want to have this, I need $10,000 a month in passive income to quit my job. I mean, how many times have you guys probably heard that? Too many, right? Well, what I learned was, does it matter if I really make $10,000 per month? Was that my W-2 mindset of getting a consistent paycheck? Or is it more important that I make $120,000 a year? And the latter is more important, right? So I didn't need so it was a kind of a learning process, an education on my part, and a change of ways in order to get comfortable with not getting paid consistently, but getting paid in big chunks. And then once I could wrap my head around that, I was like, okay, I got 2 years in the bank. So that gives me 2 years to go make nothing. But if at the end of the 2 years, I make 3 years salary, then that's a success. Now I got another 3 years, right? So there was kind of like a learning process that, really a change of, ingraining, right? Because you've been going that way since you were 16 years old, and, everyone trains you to go get a job, get a paycheck. You got to work to make a living, yada, 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 all that kind of stuff. So, I guess that's kind of a long way to answer your question, but always a good story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, people really talk about the fact that, if you've got people around you that aren't supportive of what you're trying to do, it's harder. And the fact that your wife was, you said, a catalyst in doing this and making it full time, that's incredible. That's awesome. So kudos to you guys. So nice.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, to kind of expand on that piece too is, when I stopped hanging out with other people, like everyone that hangs out with their neighbors, right? But all my neighbors, they all worked for somebody. So when I started to do this, I was weird. Like, what are you doing this for?
Yep.
Like, why don't you come hang out with us? Why don't you come do this? Well, we're going to go drink beers in the garage and watch football. And like those things had to go away, because I would work, from 5 a.m. in the morning till 8, kind of learning and reading and educating myself. Then I'd do my day job. And then at nighttime, I'd go do networking events and meetups and things like that, because I wanted to meet people that liked what I wanted to do, right? So I wanted to surround myself with those types of people. And then the more and more and more I surrounded myself with those types of people, the more comfortable you get with those ideas, because you're like, well, if they're doing it, why can't I do it, right? It's not, it's your new norm is being around different types of people. If you hang out with, weightlifters, you're probably going to start lifting weights, right? If you hang out with, that anomaly, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I started surrounding myself with entrepreneurs that are doing what I want to be doing. And then it just got easier and easier and easier and easier, because you're building those relationships. And before you know it, you are that person before you even had any level of success. And another mental change that happened for me was when I stopped telling people I was the AVP of Finance for a Fortune 500 company on Wall Street, right? Because that was my title, right? That was who I was. When I started telling people I buy commercial real estate or I buy apartment complexes, even though I hadn't closed on one yet, that mental thing happened where you start to believe it, you start to manifest it. You're speaking it into existence, and then before you know it, like that's just who you are, because that's what you brought into this world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's critical.
Yeah,
I think it's critical that your circle of friends, like you said, if you hang around. I think it was the Millionaire Mindset book mentioned once that that the poor talk about people, the middle class talk about things, possessions, cars, boats, whatever, and the wealthy talk about ideas. And it's the same thing. You're constantly just a better influx of ideas, because that's what they're thinking about, not what's going on the local TV that night.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and there's absolutely a huge power in the mindset and kind of getting into that field and having success in that field and getting taken seriously in that field is, again, prepare yourself by education, but at the same point in time, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
When Bill and I were getting started, we didn't have a deal either. But we met all over the Southeast with brokers and property management firms and other people in the space that we would essentially need to include as our partners or on our team to do these deals. Nobody ever questioned our credibility, not even once. Because we knew what we were talking about. We had an understanding of the space, the language. And again, we were very clear about our objectives and what we were looking for. We weren't just all over the place. Hey, you got a deal? No, that wasn't our approach. This is what we're looking for, kind of thing. So anyway.
Man, we run a coaching program called Making Moves in Multifamily Coaching and Mentorship. And that is one thing that I harp on all the time, because people always ask me, they're like, how did you get past the credibility part? And I was like, I never got questioned on my credibility because I was confident. I was like, when you have confidence in your voice, everyone picks up on it. Investors,
Absolutely.
brokers, sellers, everybody. It is critical that you are a confident individual in what you're saying, regardless if you have the experience in it or not. And the only way that you can be confident without the experience is the education.
Yep. Nobody ever asked us for proof of funds. That's like a death blow.
Never.
You have proof of funds?
No,
I don't have proof of funds that we're for, we have $6 million in the bank because we're buying a $20 million deal. No, I don't have $6 million sitting there. So, Yeah.
It's like a weeding tactic by brokers and stuff in order to see who's serious and who's not. But I'm like, if they even asked you that, they've written you off already.
Yep.
So just move on to the next one.
Yep, exactly. So Tim, more recently in your past couple of years of doing the multifamily and the real estate, is there something funny that's happened to you along the way that you can mention?
Man, everything's kind of funny along the way, right? It's like, the things that you thought were true are not, and the things that you thought were not true are. I don't know. It's kind of rolling with the punches every single day. I mean, it's just, I don't really have like a great, like funny story, like where we walked through an apartment complex and everybody got fleas or anything. I don't have any like funny stories like that, but I think, I think it's more along the lines of like just how things are never truly what you think they are going to be. And I think that that's funny because there's going to be some level of expectation. Is that the right word? Maybe, that somebody else is going to put this expectation of what the life actually is. And the whole reason that we do our Making Moves in Multifamily, which is a public group. We do Tim and Tim every Tuesday at 10. And all we do is talk about real stuff. Ultimately, it's like my partner, Tim, and I, we do a business meeting and we record it and we broadcast it live. Because we just want to show people what it looks like to be on the other side of the table, doing what we do on a day-to-day basis, that we're not geniuses. We don't have any secret sauce. We're just hard workers. We're dedicated. We're doing it. We've been consistent for a long period of time and we make mistakes, right? And everybody does. And there's I think it's funny that you can tell when you talk with somebody that's never invested into a deal, never bought a deal, never done anything. And their expectations are just so vastly incorrect of the truth or the reality of how it's actually going to go. And you can pick up on it so easily, like within the first, couple of minutes in a phone conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, where are you today in your journey? You mentioned, like I said, you've got transitioned to larger multifamily. You have some triple net, some other commercial real estate. You have a mentorship program. So kind of where are you now and where's your vision to go forward?
So we just started the property management company and went vertical. We took over management on July 1st. So we have a lot of property, but there's a lot of like 30 units, 40 units, 50 units, and they're kind of scattered. So we're in the process now of selling a lot of the smaller assets that we can't self-manage. Anything that was large enough for us to manage, it has to have on-site management, on-site leasing office or something like that. Anything that doesn't meet that criteria, we're trying to liquidate, get rid of, and kind of, sell off a ton of stuff in order to capitalize, we sold a deal yesterday and it provided a full 50% return to our investors in 2 years. So now all of those people are like, cool, what are you going to do with this money now? I'm like, oh, I don't have anything. Right. So it's kind of liquidating a lot of stuff, giving our investors a lot of their cash back and profits and things like that, building that track record, ultimately to repoint them to new different opportunities, larger assets, 80 to 100 plus units that have on-site management. So we're kind of like in this restructuring phase right now. Last year we did 12 transactions, and this year we did like 5 or 6. But we bought more units this year than we did last year in 12, right? So we're going in the right direction. So the future for us is to continue to sell off the smaller stuff that we're not managing, realize gains. People in the stock market realize gains all the time. So I'm going to take some money off the table, realize those gains, redevelop or redeploy them into a new asset, and then just continue to grow. I mean, just looking to grow out our property, anything that we're self-managing now. So our property management company that we don't manage for other people, just our own properties. But we need, we got to feed the beast now, right? So like you got all these employees and payroll and all these things, and in order to keep growing, you got to keep buying more stuff, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse game at this point, but that's kind of the future for us now.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
well, good deal. So, Tim, is there anything that you can mention that you do either personally or perhaps through your company that you do to give back to help others? You mentioned that you do a lot of LIHTC Section 8 type deals. I mean, anything you can mention beyond that?
So it's hard for me to say. I mean, I like to provide as much free advice to people, like, throw down the rope, as they say. If somebody's willing and able to, make a change in their life, like I want to positively impact their life in some way, shape, or form. But they got to do the work, right? Like I did the work, I did the sacrifice. You guys have done the work and done the sacrifice in order to get where you are today. And there's no free handouts. But if you consistently show up and I notice that, then I'd love to be able to help you out. But I'm not going to help you unless you're willing to help yourself. Yeah. But then also what I do locally here in the Wilmington area, I sponsored 10 families for Thanksgiving. Nice. And then, a bunch of my friends do like the Movember mustaches for kids thing. So I donated money there, and, I just tried to make an impact locally in my community through charity in order to give back. But, I do mostly LIHTC and Section 8 property. And I like to kind of change the status quo on that, right? I mean, there's such a negative connotation around Section 8 and LIHTC, and really it makes it so there's not a whole lot of competition for us, which is great. But, and so for example, the way that we give back to our properties, right? Like LIHTC is restricted rent income, right? So there's only so much we can do. But what we've been able to do is partner with this guy, and we buy a lot of stuff from him, and we work in partnership with him. But we're in this property that we're buying. I posted pictures of the leasing office in the hallway and a couple of the exterior buildings, and I had a bunch of people text me and say, "Hey, when did you guys transition to buying Class A product and moving away from LIHTC?" I'm like, "No, man, this is built in the 2000s. It's low income." And what I've been able to do is kind of open up a lot of my investors' eyes to the fact that just because they're low income doesn't mean they're bad people. Right. And there's such a negative connotation there. And one of our mentors, he had kind of explained, this is very rudimentary, but just to kind of illustrate a point, is if there, out of the 100% of properties that there are to invest into, 50% of those properties are low income housing, subsidized in some way, shape, or form. And the other 50% of those properties are market rate, right? Only 10% of the investor base goes after 50% of all available properties. The other 90% goes after the market rate property. That's why you have those super compressed cap rates. You're constantly trying to push the envelope and get the rents up and do this and do that. When it comes to Section 8 and low income housing and things like that, there's far less competition. We're buying this property right now at $75 a door, and a replacement costs $125. Wow. How can you lose money there, right? Wow. And, our average rents are going to be about $1,000 coming. We just got the new Section 8 LIHTC rents for January 1, 2024. They went up $150 per unit. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't impact our tenants at all. Like our gross income continues to go up, and our tenants see no change or very little change in their monthly expenses, right? So we make sure that we provide good, clean, affordable housing for Section 8 low income housing. And we're just trying to change the status quo and make it known that, that there are good investments in low income and Section 8 properties if you know how to look for the right property, and if you can, screen and manage your properties correctly.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, there is a stigma, which is not necessarily always true. And the reality behind it is that you're dealing with people, humans.
Yep.
And they all deserve to be treated with respect. And obviously we expect respect back, but at the same point in time, they deserve to be treated with respect. And these are their homes. These are where they live. So we want to provide a good quality product. But at the same point in time, they're bad actors in Class A apartments. They're
absolutely.
There are bad actors in a neighborhood full of $10 million homes.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Somebody's not going to pay their bills in any one of those places, and somebody's going to misbehave and be a jerk. And that doesn't necessarily, they don't all get bunched up into Section 8. They're kind of spread across just like humanity. So
yeah. And something that we've noticed when we take over properties is that the tenant base, they are defensive and aggressive, right? Because they have to be, because of the way they've been treated by previous people. But once you come in and they see that we're doing metal roofs, we're redoing the parking lots, we're painting all the exterior buildings, we're completely redoing the leasing offices and the pools with Class A finishes. The sentiment of those tenants coming into the office to pay their rent, they are excited to pay the rent then at that point, right? And it's like, wow, you guys are different. And that right there, that comment from a tenant, a Section 8 tenant, that's what we're after. You guys are different, the way that you guys are, what you're doing in this property, how you're treating us, you're doing the work orders, you're doing all of these things. And ultimately that provides a lot of value for us, for our investors, but also for the people that we're impacting by who live there.
Yeah. We had a property where, it was a C property in a C area. And, people were like, I'm moving out of this place, and then a few people actually literally changed their minds. They rescinded their notice to vacate because they said, wow, you guys are taking care of the place. You guys are spending some money to make it improve it. So I appreciate that. So I want to stay.
Yeah. And the good tenants, man, they'll tell you who the bad tenants are. And that makes it very easy for us to go through, and we'll just kind of evict a lot of them all at the same time. And, you got to get some of the riffraff out. But 90% of the units are good people. It's the 10% that everybody pays attention to. And if you can get to 10% and move them somewhere else away from your property, well, now you got hopefully 100% of your units are like, I love living here. Like all of our LIHTC properties, our Section 8 properties, 100% full. We spend $0 on advertising because we put our property on the Housing Authority website with beautiful pictures of Class A finishes. Who do you think is going to come and apply at your property? Everyone. And we don't have to spend any money to do it, right? It's like, man, you really start thinking about it. And you're like, why doesn't everybody do this?
Wow.
Well, after the airing of the podcast, but yeah.
Hey, maybe. And then, that's, admit, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not, but, that's a lot of what we talk about in our coaching program, right? And we focus a lot on low income housing, Section 8 properties, because nobody talks about it.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's great. Well, Tim, what's something you've recently implemented in your business that's allowed you to continue to scale? Like you've done a lot of vertical integration with the management. I think it's a construction company also within doing the renovations, I assume. So what are things you've implemented that allowed you to scale?
I mean, those things, right? I mean, we're only been a couple months into managing them. We're just kind of getting our heads above water now. We have 7 employees when we close on this next property, we're adding like 11 employees. So we're growing fast. But we have a regional manager that kind of overlooks all of those people. Next kind of thing for us is an asset manager / operations manager kind of role in order to kind of help us, because there's just so much stuff from K-1 filings and, being in compliance with LIHTC and all the housing authorities and the paperwork and the documentation and renovations and dealing with the contractors. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff there that has to happen. So that's the next step that we're actively marketing for, is kind of like an asset manager / operations manager type person.
Nice.
Yeah. That's impressive growth. Yeah. More than doubled, the 150% almost increase with one acquisition.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've recently connected with some private equity money, and that has really kind of made us able to go after bigger assets and feel comfortable with, we provide the deal, the debt, the operations, the insurance, all of that. You guys stroke a check and let us do what we do, and you guys do what you do, and that has really kind of opened up a lot of doors for us to be able to make offers confidently on, $27 million complexes.
Nice.
That's great.
Well done.
So Tim, not bad from 2 years, right? Going from my first first foray, and then, we're selling a lot of those assets, and now we're going after $30 million deals.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Tim, what advice would you share with somebody who's considering making a path change?
You got to bet on yourself, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's never going to be this safety comfort net that, is going to be absolute, right? Everyone wants this absolute answer of how they're going to make money and how they're going to be protected. I can guarantee you that first day when you're out of your W-2 job, you don't take a week off. You get right into work and you start figuring out, where's money going to come from? And obviously don't do that until you've had some level of success. But like, if you've done a deal or two deals and like you're starting to see a little bit of momentum, like you got to bet on yourself and take the leap and just go for it. Cause like at the end of the day, you can always go back and get another W-2 job. And, thankful I didn't have any kids at the time when we did that, but I know it gets infinitely more difficult when you have, others, that you're responsible for. But man, that to me is just fuel in the fire. Like, man, I'm going to do whatever it takes to figure these things out, work around the clock if I have to in order to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, what's the best way for our listeners to reach you and learn more about what you have going with your company and also your mentorship program?
Sure. So our Facebook group, Making Moves in Multifamily on Facebook. Obviously it's a Facebook group though. Or you can, our website is MMIMF, Making Moves in Multifamily.com. We also have Vive Equity, VIVE equity.com is the name of our company. So if you're interested in looking at deals that we have or want to connect with me, either reach out on Facebook or through our websites, or LinkedIn as well, Tim Vitale on LinkedIn.
Excellent. We'll make the show note links below available, so make it easier for people to contact you. Well, Tim, we really want to thank you for being on the Road Less Traveled show today. Really enjoyed the conversation and want to wish you continued success.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys reaching out and having me as a guest, and looking forward to hopefully being on again someday in the future to kind of catch up and say, hey, well, here's where we were and here we are now.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Thank you, Tim, for being on. We really appreciate it. And we also want to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great show content like our show today with Tim Vitale. And also want to remind everybody that Park Capital Partners has a couple important things going on. First of all, we have the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund open today to accredited investors. Second, we have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 501(c) nonprofit that Bill and I created as another way that we give back. The way that works quickly is that, first of all, we fund the operations of the company. So all the money donated goes to do its best work, which is to help others. Second, we donate personally. Third, we donate corporately. And finally, when investors invest with us to a pre-selected list, we make a donation to honor that investor to a pre-selected list of 15 different charities. So please reach out. Happy to have a conversation anytime. ParkCapitalPartnersLLC.com, ParkCapitalPartnersLLC.com. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.